Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. As always, I'm your host, Chris, and this is a show about all things movies and TV. We continue with Fright Nights with Saw, the bloody and gruesome first installment of the franchise that kicked off the torture porn era of Hollywood in the early 2000s. You can go ahead and check out the first episode of Fright Nights, which was 7, starring Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, who take on Kevin Spacey, the evil serial killer who uses the 7 deadly sins to kill his victims. You can check out that episode and many more at youtube.com/the cinematic views. You can also listen to the audio version of those episodes on your favorite podcast listening service. So with that, let's head over to news and reactions. I've got 2 movie reactions and an announcement to make. First up on the list, we've got Ahsoka Season 2 update. Ahsoka Season 2 has finished filming, which means it'll be coming sooner than you think. It is slated for next year on Disney Plus, so check out Ahsoka Season 2 in 2026 to continue the adventures of Ahsoka and the rest of those characters from Season 1. And go ahead and check out Season 1 if you have not on Disney Plus today. All those episodes are available on the streaming service. The first reaction I have for you all today is a Marvel one, and that is Marvel Zombies. It is kind of a spin-off to their What If animated series, which they did an episode from the Marvel Zombies comics, and now they have turned it into a whole mini-series. I believe there was 4 episodes of about 30 to 40 minutes each. A lot of the returning cast from the live-action MCU have donned their characters in voice form. We've got Kamala Khan joining us with newcomer Blade Knight, who is kind of a combination of the Egyptian god from Moon Knight and then Blade, of course. He was voiced by Todd Williams. Kamala Khan was voiced by her live-action counterpart, Iman Vellani. We also get a bunch of other characters like Spider-Man, Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, Doctor Strange makes an appearance, if I remember right, just briefly. We've got Wanda Maximoff as the villain, and many more MCU favorites like Black Widow, the Elena version. Red Guardian shows up in there as well. We've got Kate Bishop from the Hawkeye series, and some other Avengers joining us. Marvel Zombies was actually pretty cool. I enjoyed it a lot. I wasn't a big fan of the What If series. I think season 1 of that show was pretty good. Season 2, not so much. And then season 3 kind of tailed off for me. I lost interest in it. But Marvel Zombies was really cool. So now it kind of makes me want to go back and rewatch What If with maybe a new mindset or a new set of eyes, because I really did enjoy Marvel Zombies. I love the animation style that Disney is doing with this Marvel part of that universe, and the voice acting is fantastic. Granted, yes, they can't get a lot of the actors to return, but the ones that do a really, really good job at channeling their live action counterpart to the animated, and then the voice actors that take over for like Peter Parker, he does a fantastic job at somewhat sounding like Tom Holland, but also kind of putting his own little spin on it. But they do a really good job with these animated shows. It's just story wise with the What If series, it just kind of trickled off and I lost interest in it. But I'm excited for more Marvel Zombies because I really like this story that they did in here. There's plenty of room for more stories or even continue off of this one. The main story in this first 4 episodes was a group of the Avengers who are left over after the zombie apocalypse occurs in the Marvel Universe. Wanda Maximoff goes out and tries to get the ultimate power that she's been seeking of, which is being kind of not really controlled, but protected by this Hulk variant. After fighting a Thanos zombie variant, Hulk took it upon himself to preserve this ultimate power in the universe and keep Wanda Maximoff, aka Scarlet Witch, from taking it. Wanda Maximoff is kind of the leader of the zombie army. She's the one that's controlling them. She summons them from the ground and turns some of the Avengers into the zombies. Yelena, Kamala Khan, Kate Bishop, and Riri Williams from the Ironheart series. They are the four main Avengers left to fight Wanda Maximoff. And then as we get to that final episode in the show, there's this huge zombie battle as they try to stop Wanda Maximoff from getting this ultimate power from the Hulk / Bruce Banner. It's got some awesome action. It really got bloody towards the end. Something that Marvel has kind of shied away from in past, but I think with the release of Deadpool and Wolverine, they're a little more, I guess, what's the best word? Willing to have more blood and gore in their projects, which Marvel Zombies definitely needs to take advantage of because, well, it is a zombie show. We need to have the guts and the blood and the horror aspect of the zombies. And I think they do a really good job at not pushing that line too far to where, younger audiences can still enjoy it and watch it, but also some of the adult audiences can be like, wow, that's really awesome that they went full gore and blood in this. So I mean, there's scenes like when Spider-Man webs like 20 different zombie heads and rips them apart. It does a really cool slow-mo effect where you can see like blood spurting out of their neck cavities of where the heads were. Kate Bishop blows up a bunch of zombies with her arrows. Kamala Khan punches a bunch into pieces with her kind of bangle power. If you have seen the Miss Marvel show, you know what I'm talking about with the blue cosmic light shield that she has. So kudos to Disney for really leaning into the gore and the violence with this zombie show, because that's what a good zombie show does, is it leans into that horror and grotesque aspect of it, but also it is Disney, so they want those younger audiences to be able to watch this and not get nightmares. So I think they found a really cool middle ground for that. With the popcorn bucket scale for Marvel Zombies, I am going to give it, let me pull up my ranking here. I am giving it 4 popcorn buckets, which is very impressive for a animated Marvel short that was only probably a total of 2 hours long. But I was just really blown away by the animation style that they choose for it, as well as, leaning into that gore and blood that I mentioned. So I'm giving Marvel Zombies 4 popcorn buckets on the scale. The next movie on the list for reactions is one that I was very, very excited about, but it ultimately fell short for me, and that is The Smashing Machine, Dwayne Johnson's newest film from A24 about the life and UFC career of Mark Kerr. This is a film that has been shown trailers probably the last year and a half promoting this movie, and it was finally released on October, let me pull up the date here, October 3rd. So a couple of weeks ago, I finally saw it this past week, and it was ultimately a miss for me. It had a lot of potential of being like an Oscar-worthy movie, but I'm going to get real with you. It's just Emily Blunt and Dwayne yelling at each other in a room. I was expecting it to be more about the life, more about the career, I should say, about Mark Kerr in this newly formed Ultimate Fighting, I guess, league, which would become the UFC. But ultimately, this movie is just centered around Emily Blunt and Dwayne Johnson yelling at each other. Emily Blunt plays the girlfriend of Mark Kerr, Dawn Staples. It also stars a couple of other pretty known actors like Ryan Bader, who I've seen in a bunch of things. He plays Mark Kerr's best friend, Mark Coleman. And I wanted to bring up Coleman because he's the character that you're ultimately really rooting for in this movie. You would think a movie about Mark Kerr, you'd be rooting for him. You're not. The audience, about probably 20, 25 minutes into the movie, you are switching your views over to Mark Coleman. He's the character that you want to focus on. You're the one that he's rooting for. He's got a family. He's got kids. He's got this ambition to become the best of the best so that he can support his family. Whereas Mark Kerr doesn't know what to do with his life. He's actually, in my opinion, and now I'm not an expert in analyzing fight techniques or anything about the UFC, I think Mark Coleman is actually a better fighter than Mark Kerr. So it makes sense to me that Mark Coleman went on to win the tournament that they were both fighting in Japan. I just don't really see what the excitement was around Mark Kerr. Now, I'm not a full-time UFC watcher, so I don't know. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but taking it from the movie, they really show that Mark Kerr wasn't really a outstanding ultimate fighter. I mean, yeah, he's big, he's got muscles, he's got some skill behind his belt, but ultimately his best friend Mark Coleman was the best fighter, and the way this movie ends, I think, was fitting to where Mark Kerr loses and Mark Coleman ends up going on to win this entire tournament that Mark Kerr has been training a long time to do. But I mean, the Rock is pretty good in here. I mean, looking at the performances are pretty good. Emily Blunt's was a little flat for me, but granted, she wasn't given a whole lot to do on screen. And then Dwayne, who is the spotlight of the movie, he does give a decent performance. Now, is it an Oscar-worthy performance? I don't think so. Leading up to this movie, I was really excited that the Oscars would finally give him an opportunity to show that he could be a really good actor. But this movie does not support an Oscar campaign whatsoever. I just expected a lot more from the script, from, I guess, Dwayne himself. It's just the movie felt really flat, and in the end, you are rooting for Ryan Batter's character, Mark Coleman, the entire time. And a movie about Mark Kerr you don't want that to happen. You don't want to start rooting for a side character in a movie that is centered around this person in history. So I am giving the Smashing Machine 2 popcorn buckets. Now, I really wanted to do 1, but going back and kind of analyzing it again, I do like some of the action in those UFC scenes in the ring, and the training scenes are really cool. I can't give it any higher than 2 popcorn buckets, because 90% of this film is just Dwayne and Emily Blunt yelling at each other in a room, whether it's backstage of the arena or at home in their living room or kitchen. It's just 2 people who are not supposed to be together, being together and just screaming at each other for 90% of the movie. So I am giving the Smashing Machine 2 popcorn buckets, even though there can be an argument made for 1, but I'm going to settle on 2. So that's going to do it for today's news and reactions. We're going to get to our featured film of the day, which is Saw.
Hello, Dr. Gordon. I want to play a game. Your aim is to kill Adam. You have until 6 on the clock to do it.
The newspapers started calling him the Jigsaw Killer.
Looks like our friend Jigsaw likes to book himself front row seats to his own sick little games.
You could be the one who put me in this room!
We're gonna have to work together if we want to get out of here.
What is it, Sweepy?
There's a man in my room.
What are you doing to them, you bastard?
Most people are so ungrateful to be alive. But not you. Not anymore.
To overcome something, you have to understand what a perfect engine it is. He doesn't want us to cut through our chains. He wants us to cut through our feet.
Sick bastard. Yes, I'm sick, officer.
There's a way out of here! There's a way out!
I'm sick of it all.
We're out of time.
Live or die. Make your choice.
So like I said at the top of the episode, Saw is the first installment of the hugely popular and iconic Saw franchise. It kicked off the torture porn, I guess is what everybody called it back in the early 2000s, the torture porn era, where the bloodier, the dismemberment, all that was like, we got to kick it up to a 100, and that's how we're going to make the film. We're going to center the film around spilling guts, spilling blood, dismembering people, and all the special effects and makeup that they can kind of get away with the different techniques of dismembering bodies. It's a franchise that I wasn't really into at the time, but as I got older and as the installments came out, my curiosity got the better of me. So then I started rewatching these, and then when Jigsaw came out back in 2017, which is a sequel but not really sequel to it, it's more of like a prequel slapped in between Saw 1 and Saw 2, and I'll get more on that when we get through the rankings on today's episode. But when Spiral came out is really when I was like, okay, I need to jump back into this franchise because I think I kind of like the story that they're telling and the different ideas that they throw through about, life, death, and the consequences of your actions. You get really kind of philosophical in a way in some of these installments. But I really love Spiral a lot with Chris Rock, and like Jigsaw, I'll talk about more of that movie when we get to the rankings because it is ranked pretty high in my rankings because I absolutely love that installment of the franchise and kind of the different ways that they go about it as far as the story and the traps and the big twist at the end, which is kind of what these installments are based upon, is having some kind of reveal or twist at the end of these games in these installments. But this first one is pretty iconic. And I absolutely really do enjoy watching it, even though I'm not into, gory dismembering stuff. I know the Terrifier films are really popular right now, and that's kind of bringing back this torture porn era into 2025 with those Art the Clown Terrifier movies. And those are movies that I'm somewhat interested in. It took me a long, long time to watch them. I finally watched all three of them in this spooky season of October. And I'm going to say, I think I like the Saw franchise a little bit more than I do like those Terrifier movies. But I kind of lump them all together in this big torture porn side of Hollywood, which kind of died out in the in the 2010s into the 2020s, but then Spiral came out, and I think like 2023 or 2021, something like that, and then Saw 10 came out a couple of years ago, and I really like that one. That one's ranked kind of high in my rankings too. So these Saw movies are starting to come back. I think they're making another one that's coming out next year, so we'll be talking about Saw once again on the show when that one comes out. I wonder if there is a release date. Let me pull that up here. I want to say it was originally supposed to come out in 2025, but I think they got pushed to 2026. Let me see. So Saw 11 is still in development and has been pushed to 2025. Now, okay, so now it won't be returning in 2025. Looks like it will be 2026. So I would say look next year for the next installment of Saw. But this first movie was actually pretty good. This one came out on October, what was it? October 29th, 2004. So we're coming up on the 21st anniversary of the film. It stars Carrie Elways as Dr. Lawrence Gordon, who is kind of the main character of the movie. He co-stars with Lee Waddell, I think is how you say it. He plays Adam, his counterpart in this really dirty uh, kind of bathroom, I guess is the best way to describe it, in this warehouse that we really don't know where. And that's the interesting about this Saw franchise. I don't remember them ever saying like a city or a town name. It's just kind of in a normal crime ridden town in America. I don't think they ever really specify if it's in like LA, in New York, or in Chicago or Detroit. So I think I was an interesting choice to not really like come out and say like, okay, this takes place in Detroit. You know, they don't really do that. They kind of just throw you into this world of traps and this serial killer who, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit when we get to Tobin Bell, who plays John Kramer. But it's an interesting idea behind this franchise that they label the Jigsaw killer a serial killer, but he doesn't actually like kill people. He designs these traps for the victims to make their own choice on whether they live or die. So in a way, he doesn't actually kill people. They end up killing themselves through these traps that he designed. So, I mean, there's an argument being made that no, he wasn't a serial killer. These people killed themselves. He gave them a way out if they would follow the rules of the game. But then you have the other people of the argument where they're like, well, no, he kidnapped them, designed these traps to kill them. So he is a murderer. Me, I think I'm leaning towards the side of he's a serial kidnapper. He's not necessarily a serial killer because he actually does design the traps to make the person live. But then, of course, for the person to live, they have to injure themselves. So I guess in a way, it's more of like, I don't know. It's a really interesting. The more I talk about it, the more I'm thinking maybe he is a serial killer. But it's a really fascinating topic to discuss on the way they came about the character that is Jigsaw. Where like, yes, he's definitely a serial kidnapper. I'll start with that. So he is kidnapping people. He is locking them away and forcing them to free themselves through injuring themselves. So I mean, trying to go through my knowledge of, you know, the law, it's more or less like attempted murder, maybe. I don't know. It's a really interesting topic. Feel free to reach out in the video below or on social media on the Cinematic Reviews page on your ideas of like, is Jigsaw a serial killer or is he more or less a serial kidnapper? I'm curious to see what other people say on it. Me, I think the more I talk about it, I think I'm leaning towards he's a serial kidnapper that designs these traps for them to survive it. So he's not necessarily killing them. It's kind of just they made the wrong choice, so they ended up dying. I don't know. It's really interesting to talk about, and maybe that says something about how my mind works or how I see these movies. But for right now, I think I'm leaning towards he's more of a serial kidnapper, and everybody just has to make the right decision and kind of use free will to survive these traps. But I digress on that whole topic. Lee Wan now, who plays Adam, actually helped James Wan, who is director. He actually helped write the movie based on dreams and nightmares that him and James Wan had, which is really, really fascinating when I came across that in the research for the movie today. Is they wrote this together and he starred himself in there as one of the victims of the trap based on these dreams that they had one night. So, and speaking of James Wan, he has become a horror icon. He helped kickstart, you know, Blumhouse with movies like Insidious, The Conjuring. Before that, he did, of course, The Saw. Now he's producing films like Megan, and looks like he helped produce more of the Saw movies instead of directing them. He did The Nun. more Insidious movies, and then he ended up jumping over to DC to direct the Aquaman movies, which the first one made a lot of money. I wasn't a fan of it. And then the second film ended up losing DC money, and that was even worse than the first one. So I think he really finds his power in horror films. And I think jumping over to DC was not really a mistake, but probably not the right career path. I think it kind of just put a pause on his career when he could have made some more awesome horror movies instead of two okay superhero movies. But I get it though. These directors in Hollywood, they like to explore different genres of Hollywood. They don't want to get labeled just the horror guy or just the comic book guy or just the comedy guy. So I appreciate James Wan trying to stretch his legs a little bit and trying out new genres. But I think he's far better and far more comfortable in a horror genre than he is like a superhero big budget studio franchise. So definitely the king of horror next to probably, well, of course, Jason Blum, who kickstarted Blumhouse Productions, but James Wan is probably the biggest name in the horror franchise or the horror genre with all the franchises that he has helped write and produce and bring to the big screen. So some of the other cast members in this movie, Detective David Tapp, played by Danny Glover, who everybody should pretty much know from the Lethal Weapon franchise and a bunch of other movies that he did, like Shooter, who he ends up being the villain in Shooter. He was in the terrible movie 2012, but I think he's most known for as Detective Murtaugh in the Lethal Weapon franchise. He is the detective in this franchise as kind of the obsessed detective who wants to catch Jigsaw because he just can't get over the fact that he almost died from Jigsaw. You see that scene in the movie where he gets his throat cut and he's sitting there holding it, and then we flash forward a little bit in time and see that he did survive that cut to the throat because he's got the scar still there and he could barely talk. So, and that's another thing I'll mention in a little bit too about the timeline of this franchise. It can get pretty confusing as the installments go on, and I'll talk about that a little bit too more in the ranking segment when I go through all the installments of the franchise. But the timeline can get a bit confusing in this franchise, which is one of the negatives I'll give to it. Is it could have been a little more fluid, but I get it. They probably didn't come up with all these installments together. They kind of, as the franchise grew on and grew popular, they probably pieced together some of the gaps and so on. So, but Danny Glover's still really good in there. I love seeing him in films. The other detective in here, Detective Steven Singh, played by Ken Leung, I think is how you say it. I'm so terrible with names. I'm so sorry, Ken. The only movie I remember seeing him in was X-Men The Last Stand as the mutant with the little spikes that made him look like a porcupine. That's the only other movie that I've seen him in. And he doesn't have like a major role in this movie. I'm trying to look up what other movies. So he wasn't Old. That's interesting. I don't remember him in Old. I do remember him. Okay, The Sopranos. I think I remember him vaguely in Sopranos. Apparently he was in Joker too. I don't remember that. Avatar. Oh, no way. He was Commander Zhao. So I have seen him in more stuff as I'm reading this. Okay. Ken Luang. Luang? I'm going to quit saying. I'm just going to call him Ken. So he has been in a much more projects than I thought. But he's a friendly face that I like seeing. He did a pretty good job as the partner to David Tapp, Danny Glover's character. Now to the big guns. The main event, that is John Kramer, a.k.a. Jigsaw. He is played by Tobin Bell in this film and the entire franchise. Now, Jigsaw is an interesting character. With how the franchise goes, it gets really confusing when they kill him off in the fourth movie. So then all the sequels after that are kind of prequels, but not really prequels. They're like bits and pieces of the main story within those first four movies. Like Jigsaw, for example, the movie from 2017 takes place between Saw 1 and Saw 2 because they wanted to bring back Tobin Bell as Jigsaw, but the only way you could do that is to set it within the first four movies. So I think killing him off in the fourth movie is one of the big reasons why this franchise kind of lost its steam a little bit. But then once they start introducing different killers to the movies, it sort of starts making sense as disciples of Jigsaw, as you see with Detective Hoffman, and then eventually. So this is a big spoiler. So if you haven't seen the franchise, I'm going to be spoiling a bunch of stuff for the movies. So I would suggest you either pause the podcast or fast forward a little bit because I'm going to start spoiling some future stuff in here if you haven't seen it. So Carrie Elways ends up getting revealed in, I believe it was Saw, the final chapter, or Saw 3D is what they ended up calling it. It gets revealed that he was a disciple of Jigsaw this entire time. So but they don't reveal that until like 6 movies later because I think it was just a scheduling thing or they just didn't think of the idea until later on. So, but then you have the Amanda character who's also the disciple of Jigsaw. So that's kind of how they're able to add sequels on top of each other was through these disciples of Jigsaw after he dies. And so they're able to piece together this huge story that happens between the first four movies. And it gets kind of confusing with the timelines, but it's also kind of an interesting way to do a franchise because not many have the guts or the balls to do it. But I do think that they really did back themselves into a corner, killing Jigsaw off too early. Now maybe they did it because they didn't think there was going to be a movie after the fourth movie because they just were unsure of the popularity of the franchise. And then once people were like, "Oh, we love this franchise. Like, when do we get another one?" They kind of had to get creative and piece together this franchise within those first four movies, and it gets kind of messy. But going back to Tobin Bell, I think he's fantastic as Jigsaw. The voice is so iconic with the videos and the voice recorders and all that. He is very, very iconic, the voice is. And I honestly only know him from the Saw franchise and then The Firm with Tom Cruise and Gene Hackman. I'm looking at his IMDb right now. Looks like he was in The Flash as the voice of Savitar, which I guess makes sense. It's such an iconic voice. Everything else on this IMDb, I am not familiar with. That is not Saw, or apparently he was in Criminal Minds. That makes sense. Back in 2005, yeah, he was in one episode. But yeah, other than the Saw franchise and The Firm, I don't recognize him from anywhere else. But he will be remembered as Jigsaw from the Saw franchise. Like that is who he is. Just like Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. are going to be remembered as Captain America and Iron Man. This is his Iron Man or Captain America is Jigsaw in the Saw franchise. But Tobin Bell is fantastic. I keep saying that they backed themselves into a corner by killing him off because I really, really love him playing Jigsaw, and I wish they would have like not killed him off and had him continue through these movies linear instead of killing him off and then having to piece together these side stories that fit together in this bigger storyline of the franchise. I really wish, I think it would have been a much, much better franchise if they would have just went fluid through the timeline and then just added on sequels as it goes on, as this serial kidnapper or trap master can't be getting caught by the cops until maybe you do a grand finale to end the franchise with him dying. But I get it though. They probably didn't think at the time that there was going to be, 12 or 10 installments of this franchise. So they just kind of had to work with what they had, but he's still really, really good. I really love Tobin Bell as the Jigsaw, and I love Carrie Elwes as Dr. Lawrence Gordon. He really shows his acting chops in here. Um, we're gonna be bringing back the best in show. This was a tough one, but I did end up finding a winner, and we'll go over that too in the ranking segment of the day. I talked about James Wan already. Torture porn phase of Hollywood. So I kind of touched up on it already. My final thoughts on it: I was never a huge fan of it when it was happening in the early 2000s. This kicked it off in 2004, and then probably for a good, I don't know, 6-7 years, torture porn was a big thing in Hollywood. Every year you'd have a couple movies about, dismembering and spilling guts out and all that. I mean, the 2009 Friday the 13th movie really leaned on the gory aspect of the killings from Jason, like people getting gutted and watch the guts fall out, all that stuff. But the Saw franchise really took it to a whole nother level where you're seeing people rip their teeth, so the iconic headpiece that Amanda wears where it pulls apart the jaw is just fucking nuts on how they did that with the mechanics and the special effects that they did, because you see how the jaw works. And then in later installments, I think it was Saw the Final Chapter, where Jigsaw's wife ends up getting her face pulled apart from that trap, and you see it. You see her jaws pop out, and everything's just hanging out. Like the special effects and the makeup is incredible in this franchise, and the way that they're able to pull off these kills are really, really cool and really creative and very, very intriguing on how they did it. And yeah, it's just that phase definitely died out, and I think now we're starting to get back into it with, like I mentioned, the Terrifiers, and then now with more Saw installments potentially on the way, we might be making a surge of the torture porn era, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, Terrifier is a whole nother level. I mean, you literally see Art the Clown saw somebody in half. It's pretty gruesome what they do in the Terrifier movies, and I think they kind of they took inspiration, I would assume, from the Saw franchise with that franchise. So yeah, I think the torture porn phase is probably trying to make a comeback in Hollywood, but we'll see. That's kind of Hollywood for you too. They tend to go back into the wells that were like, okay, the Saw movies were popular back in the early 2000s. We could probably either make a Saw installment or maybe take inspiration from that genre, and maybe we'll kickstart it again because we're running out of ideas. It's the classic Hollywood roadmap is once they run out of ideas, they look back in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, and they were like, okay, that made some money. That made a bunch of money. Let's just take inspiration from that instead of making something new. So I think the torture porn phase is going to potentially be coming back to Hollywood because they can't think of anything else to do. So they're going to go back into that well, which is really going to be interesting now with the way social media is. Back in 2004, 2005, the internet was still pretty young. Facebook was, I don't think Facebook was started. When did Facebook start up? I think that would have been, even if it was started, it was very early phases of it. Let me look up here. Also, it came out that same year. So very, very early Facebook part of that journey. So yeah, with social media now, I'm very, very curious to see how this torture porn era goes in Hollywood. But it's definitely going to make a comeback with the Terrifiers and potentially more Saw installments. So looking at favorite quotes and iconic scenes, I had a tough time with favorite quotes because there's only a few really iconic quotes in here that I like. So you get the classic, it's the rules, game over. Like they end every movie with game over. You have Jigsaw, either the puppet or Tobin Bell saying, I want to play a game. That's probably the most popular line to come out of this movie. There's a couple lines from Adam that I really liked. Uh, Dr. Gordon says, "Hey, my name is Lawrence Gordon. What's your name?" Adam responds, "My name is very fucking confused," which I really like. And then another line from Adam: "I went to bed in my shithole apartment and I woke up in an actual shithole." That's when Detective Gordon or Dr. Gordon, excuse me, asks Adam, like, "Do you remember anything? Do you remember getting kidnapped?" Or yada, yada, yada. So those are the only real, like, iconic, I guess, or popular lines that I could think of to put on the list for today. And iconic scenes were kind of tough too, because it's a very contained movie. I'd say about 80% of the movie happens in this one room, this really nasty, dirty, rundown shithole, as Adam says, bathroom. I'm going to call it a bathroom because it's got sinks and toilets, so I'm assuming it's a bathroom. Uh, so I had a tough time just kind of coming up with 5 scenes, but I did. So the first scene I got was Gordon and Adam waking up the room. As a viewer seeing this franchise for the first time, it's like, okay, what kind of movie, what kind of experience am I into? Well, we wake up with Carrie Elwes and the Adam character. They're chained up to these pipes. It's dirty. It's probably smelling. They have a dead body right in front of them that's probably been rotting for a while. And they're confused. They're trying to remember what happened in the last couple of hours. Then this voice recording comes out of the tape recorder that they pull off of the dead guy's body. Jigsaw killer is explaining, hey, you've both are pieces of shit. Dr. Gordon's case, he was lying to his wife, cheating on her. Adam, he was taking pictures. He was hired by somebody to take pictures, So they're linked together because it turns out that Adam was actually taking pictures of Dr. Gordon and his potential affair and all that stuff that he was involved in. So they're trying to piece together, and it's a pretty iconic scene where you have Carrie Elwes and Lee and Adam chained up to these giant pipes with the giant chains that not even a saw can cut. So that was an iconic scene I came up with. And then the Jigsaw puppet on the TV, the first time seeing, that creepy ass puppet on the TV where that's like a ventriloquist doll, moving its mouth in sync with John Kramer's voiceover. So that's a very iconic scene for sure. Then you kind of go off to a different location. You have that guy who was forced to crawl through the barbed wire in that cage, which was another trap set by John Kramer, separate from the one that Gordon and Adam are in. So that's another iconic scene, I thought. And then the big one is Dr. Gordon saw his foot off, which is probably the most iconic scene in the movie, where Carrie Elwes realizes that he doesn't want us to cut through the chains. He wants us to cut our feet off. So what forces Gordon to do this is the fact that Jigsaw, through his henchman Zepp, who ends up being the orderly in the hospital that Gordon works at, kidnaps Gordon's wife and daughter, threatening to kill him if he doesn't, participate in the game. So a desperate Dr. Gordon realizes this and he goes, fuck it, I'm going to cut off my damn leg. I'm a surgeon. I know where to cut and I know how to treat this when I need to. So that scene where he's wrapping his blue shirt around his ankle, to cut off circulation in the leg so he can cut it. And then he's biting down on the other part of the shirt because he's in agony, cutting off of his own foot. It's pretty bloody. It's pretty graphic. And this is the moment where you realize that this franchise is fucked up because it's forcing people to cut their own foot off. I think in Saw, 6? The one lady in the trap had to cut her own damn arm off and shove it on a scale to have enough weight to release the chains. So this is the moment where you realize that, yeah, this franchise is going to be fucking wild. And it does. Some of those traps in the later sequels get pretty gnarly, especially that headpiece that Amanda wears. It's pretty wild. And then the last scene that I got on the list is the bloody John Kramer waking up from the floor. Turns out John Kramer was in there the whole time. The prosthetics that they use in there make it look like he's really dead. the smell and the blood everywhere. But turns out that he was listening to them the entire time. And that's the really cool thing about these movies. In as far as time frame, they actually don't last very long. I know it seems like I think the movies on average are like an hour and 40 minutes, 30 minutes. I think what does this movie clock in at? An hour 43. But the game itself really only lasts about an hour. I think that's what most of the games last in these franchises, about an hour. So everything is happening within an hour, and the setup happens pretty quick. Gordon and Adam wake up pretty soon after they're chained to the pipe. So John Kramer, which seems to be sitting there for a while, he was probably only sitting there for maybe an hour and a half. So it was a pretty cool twist at the end when you watch this movie for the first time, that John Kramer was the body there on the ground and he was alive the entire time. It was really, really cool how they did it. So that was the big twist at the end. And you get that scene where he goes, the key to your chain, Adam, is in the tub. But then you get that flashback from the beginning where Adam woke up and the key went down the drain. So he's pretty much fucked at that point. And you get the iconic line, "Game over," as Jigsaw is closing the door of the room, leaving Adam there to rot for the rest of his day. So pretty wild ending. I like the twist in this one. I love a good twist in the movie too. Really, really well done by James Wan to give us a twist in this movie. Next up, we have fun facts. I found a few interesting ones here. There wasn't a whole lot to pick from. Like I said, this is a pretty small movie. It only lasts about an hour and 40 minutes. One of the items on the fun facts is it actually was filmed in only 18 days. Danny Glover, who plays Detective Tapp, did all of his scenes in 2 days. I mean, there weren't a lot of scenes that he was in, so that explains him only being on set for 2 days. But an 18-day shoot, that's pretty short. I mean, it's a pretty simple movie. I mean, 90% of the movie is filmed in that one room. So the 18-day film timeline makes sense. They filmed it in chronological order in order to make the actors feel what the characters would feel, which is very smart. You can't really do a movie like this in pieces. You got to go from start to finish so that you can make the actors feel disoriented, make them feel like they're actually participating in this game. It gives it a more authentic feel to the movie. So I really appreciate James Wan going in chronological order. Not a lot of sets do that nowadays. They kind of, depending on the budget they have and the timing that they have to work with, they got to film things in certain orders. But I really appreciate that a movie like this, James Wan realized that, the best way to do this is to do it in order to have the actors feel like they are actually in a trap. So I think that was awesome. The original idea for the film was actually set in an elevator, not in a dirty ass bathroom. I think an elevator would have been interesting. I'm surprised that they haven't really done an elevator one in here. You get some scenes in an elevator, but not one of the games. So maybe that's a thing that they can explore. Unless I'm forgetting one, but I don't remember there ever being a game set in an elevator. But that's a really cool setting to do. I think I like the dirty bathroom better, though. It kind of added to the grotesqueness of it. The film was originally NC-17. No shocker there. James Wan, the director, actually had to remove content to hit an R rating. Yeah, I'm not surprised that this probably should have been an NC-17 movie. I don't think I really want to know what kind of scenes he had to cut out because, I mean, we get some pretty gruesome scenes in an R-rated version. I don't think I want to know what the NC-17 version of this is. Probably actually seeing Gordon saw his entire leg off because they do it really cool where, and budgetary wise, it makes sense the way they did it. So they start off with seeing him saw. You get a little bit of spurts of blood, but then they turn the camera away, and you just see spurts of blood popping out. You don't see him actually, sawing a prosthetic foot. So maybe I gotta imagine the NC-17 version of that actually saw him cut off his own foot fully. But yeah, I don't think I want to know what an NC-17 version of this movie is. That's got to be pretty wild. And then the last fun fact is Gordon was filmed with steady, controlled shots, and then Adam was filmed with handheld shots, basically making it kind of compatible to how they're moving, their emotions were. So Detective Gordon was more, level-headed. He's trying to play the game. He's trying to follow the rules. He's trying to get out of here. So that's why James Wan decided, okay, let's give Cary Elwes the steady cam because he's more, coherent and steady-minded. Whereas Adam, get the handheld shots are pretty shaky. They're all over the place because he's all over the place. He's freaking out. He's not thinking straight. He's like in panic mode where Gordon is like, okay, we need to calm down. We need to talk to each other. We need to play the rules. We need to get out of here and keep our sanity intact. So I thought that was a really cool way to do that too, where you get the two angles of how the characters are feeling. But yeah, this is a pretty awesome way to kick off this really gory and insane franchise. But the more I watch this franchise, I start to like it a little bit more. I'm older now. I'm more appreciative of a lot of different genres of movies. Whereas when this movie came out, I kind of stayed in my own little box. Action movies, comedies, those are my things. Then eventually got into horror movies like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, slasher stuff like that. And then eventually, as I get older, I'm watching things like Terrifier, Saw, Spit on Your Grave, all that weird shit. Wrong Turn got pretty weird with the inbred crap. Hills Have Eyes got pretty fucking wild too with the kills and stuff like that. So as I'm in my 30s and as I'm a huge movie nerd now with the podcast, I'm starting to see these movies for what they are and enjoy them a lot more. So I'm rewatching all the movies right now. I think I'm in the middle of Jigsaw, which I haven't seen since it came out back in 2017. So, and I'm really liking it more now that I'm rewatching it because it was one of the ones I didn't really care for when it came out. And now I'm really excited to go into Spiral and Saw 10 are the last two of the franchise because I'm doing it in release order. But yeah, I appreciate the Saw franchise a lot more now after rewatching it and doing the podcast for you all today. I'm really enjoying diving back into the early 2000s with this torture porn era. So let's end the show like we always do with the rankings. Okay, I got a couple of different segments that we are going to do in the rankings. So first up, we're going to going through my ranking of the 10 Saw films. Then we'll do best in show. And then we'll go through the popcorn scale for the first Saw movie. So looking at the rankings for Saw franchise, I'm going to go from the bottom up. So like I said, I wasn't a big fan of Jigsaw back in 2017. So I got that at number 10. When I finish that movie, we'll see how I feel at the end of it. But for right now, I've got Jigsaw at number 10. Then we had number 9, Saw 3D, Saw Final Chapter, Saw 7, whatever you want to call it. This one, I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to tie it back to the first movie. They brought back Cary Elwes. They had the big reveal, like I said, where he was actually a disciple of Jigsaw, helping him out with some of the traps. I just wasn't really feeling it. This one came out in 2010, and then we went on that hiatus for a few years, and then Jigsaw came out 7 years later. So Saw 3D, I have at number 9. Number 8 is Saw 6. This one, I think I've only seen twice now. Not a huge fan of it. You get more of Detective Hoffman, who kind of takes over a lot of the Jigsaw stuff once John Kramer is basically immobilized by the cancer that he is suffering from. But Saw 6 is at number 8. Not a big fan of that. Number 7, I got Saw 3, which is where we get the introduction more of, John Kramer's cancer and all that stuff. But that one, still not the biggest fan of this one either. So I got this one at number 7. Saw 4. This is one that I've probably seen the most, I think. I've got Not, yeah, I think 4 and 5 I've seen the most. I think I've seen 5 more than the first movie, actually, which is pretty crazy. Before this one is this is where the timeline really gets messy and confusing, because this is when, after John Kramer dies, you get the return of Donnie Wahlberg, who was Detective Eric Matthews in the second movie. He disappears during the third movie. You're assuming that he's dead, but there's hints that he's alive. Well, this movie ends up confirming that Eric Matthews was being held captive by Jigsaw. And then you get the reveal of Detective Hoffman as Jigsaw's disciples. So I got that one at number 6. Number 5, I've got Saw 2. This is where the Donnie Wahlberg's character Eric Matthews is introduced. His son ends up being one of the victims in this house that they have to survive with the different doors and different traps inside each door. So I got that one at number 5. That one was pretty good. I enjoyed that one. Saw 5, I've seen probably the most. I enjoy this one a lot, so that's why I got it at number 4. You get more Detective Hoffman, like I said. You get introduced to the FBI agent Strom, who ends up chasing Hoffman for a couple of movies until he ends up getting killed. Why I really like this one is I like the traps. That trap where Strom ends up getting stuck in, I think it's the actual like cover of the movie, the DVD too, where he's in this box that's filling up with water, and he happens to have a pen in his pocket, and he basically tranks himself. He stabs a pen in his throat, and he's able to breathe and then get out of this trap. So I think I like this one pretty well. I think it was a good one. 3 is, this is where I got Saw 10. I really liked Saw 10 when it came out. This is actually a fun fact about me. Saw 10 is the only Saw movie that I ever saw in theaters. I didn't see Spiral. I didn't see the first movie. I didn't see Jigsaw in the theater. Saw 10, when it came out in 2023, was the only Saw movie that I've ever seen in theaters, and I really enjoy it. It, like I said before, it takes place in between Saw 1 and Saw 2, so we get more Tobin Bell and as Jigsaw, and we get more Amanda and some of those other characters that we gotten to know over the franchise. So Saw 10 is at number 3. Number 2 is where I got Spiral. Now, I almost put Spiral at number 1, but after rewatching Saw and talking about it, I'm gonna leave Spiral at number 2. And the reason why Spiral is at the top, one of the top of my list, is the twist at the end. I think they really did a good job with the twist at the end. I'm not going to spoil that because it's actually a really good twist, and I don't want to spoil that. So go ahead and watch Spiral if you haven't. But I really, really like that twist at the end. I love Chris Rock. He plays, Detective Zeke Banks. I think it's Ezekiel is his full name. It's also got Sam Jackson as Chris Rock's dad. And then it's got Max Minghella, who is no stranger to this podcast. I've reviewed a bunch of movies that he is in. He is Detective William Shink, I think is how you say it. He is the partner of Chris Rock, kind of a rookie partner. But I really like Spiral. I'm excited to rewatch it again. I think Chris Rock is really, really good in it. So I got Spiral at number 2. And then on number 1, if you're keeping track, I've got Saw 1, the first installment that kicked off this franchise. It's a very iconic movie. I'm starting to really love rewatching it. It's a very contained, very small, and very simple movie. And I really like it a lot. So I got it at number 1. So that is the rankings. We're going to get to Best in Show. So the nominees for Best in Show is Carrie Elwes as Dr. Lawrence Gordon, Tobin Bell as John Kramer, a.k.a. Jigsaw, and then Detective David Tapp, Danny Glover are the nominees. Now, as a reminder, if you have not seen the 7 review episode, and this is your first Fright Night episode, Best in Show is a new segment I came up with where we pick the best performance in the movie. And this is tough. I really wanted it to be Tobin Bell, but I don't think we get enough from him. We just get the voiceover work. I'm going with Carrie Elwes Dr. Lawrence Gordon as Best in Show. He did a really, really great job in here. It's a very iconic movie that he is in. Other than Princess Bride, this is probably what he's going to be known for as the guy that cut his own foot off in Saw. But he did a really good job. He did a really good job with keeping it level-headed. He freaked out the best when he needed to be. I mean, that phone call to his wife and daughter where he's crying and screaming on the ground felt real. When he was hacking up his foot, that felt real with the screaming and the drive that he just like, I have to get to my family. I'm going to cut off my fucking foot. And it just felt so real. I really love his performance in this movie. So Best in Show for Saw is Carrie Elwes as Dr. Lawrence Gordon. And finally, last bit that we have to do, and that is the popcorn bucket scale. This is a little tough, but I did come up with a rating for this one, and I'm giving it 3 popcorn buckets. I couldn't quite give it 4, but I think 3 is where it needs to be. And if you are familiar with my scale, 3 is actually pretty decent. 2 is starts to get pretty bad. 4 is like it's getting up to like this is like really, really awesome. So I'm gonna kind of meet in the middle there. I'm gonna go with Saw with 3 popcorn buckets for my rating for the film. So that's gonna do it for this episode of Fright Night. Let me pull up the schedule here. See if I can find it. I believe it is. I'm trying to remember what it's gonna be. I think it's either Sinister or Sinners. I want to say it's Sinners next. See if I can find it. Where is the schedule? Oh, here we go. Okay. So next week is going to be Sinners. So on October 17th will be the next Fright Night episode. Sinners starring Michael B. Jordan and Haley Steinfeld. I'll also release a review episode of Tron Ares, which comes out in theaters today, actually, October 10th. So we're going to do that one. And then eventually we'll get back to the Lord of the Rings franchise with the finale of the Return of the King extended series, edition. So there's going to be a lot of stuff coming on the podcast for sure, different genres and all that. And then eventually, once Fright Nights is over, Friday will now be labeled Marvel Friday, leading up into Avengers Doomsday on December 18th, 2026. I think we're supposed to get a trailer for Avengers Doomsday during Avatar Fire and Ash, which comes out in December. So I'm very excited there. So yeah, bunch of episodes coming out for the podcast. Go back and check out all the other episodes on YouTube or on your favorite podcast listening service. So that'll do it for this episode of Fright Nights. I will see you next Friday for Sinners. And then also check out the Tron Ares episode, which will be coming out next week as well. Later, everyone, and stay spooky during this October month.